Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coop.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
We're back. Um, so I thought this a good thing to talk about this week would be the whole CFC versus MFC. I don't know. Debate's probably the wrong word. It's certainly a discussion a lot of companies are having, trying to decide what they want to do, and it became a little bit more clear last week as Kroger sort of officially launched their CFC in Ohio and announced that they were starting basically a friends and family test in Florida. Again, Florida is a place where they don't have any stores. I guess that is it purely a matter of size in terms of whether or not companies decide to go in which direction?
Ooh, that's a big question. Um, it's not necessarily a matter of size. I mean, CFCs, which stands for Customer Fulfillment Center, um, they're massive. They're big facilities. They cost, 150 to $300 million, and I could be a little bit off on that, but it's lots of tens of millions of dollars to launch. They carry lots of SKUs. Well, not necessarily lots of SKUs, but they carry a large amount of inventory, and they pump out, product very efficiently, about similarly efficiently as a micro fulfillment center does, though. Um, and they just, given the volume that comes out of those facilities, they tend to support a large customer base
Right.
from the one facility. Whereas a micro fulfillment center is smaller by its definition, a few $1,000,000 to put up one, and that tends to service a smaller, tighter geography because you just don't have as much inventory in there. So, it's turning over, and so a MFC might service a 10-mile radius, where a CFC, might service a couple 100-mile radius.
Yeah.
Um,
In the case of what Kroger announced last week, and they were more specific about the numbers for Florida in terms of distance, but they basically said it would serve a 90 to 100-mile radius. But in addition to serving Florida, where of course they don't have any stores, and they're not really talking a lot about how that's going to play out. It could also, the stores they're also saying it could serve Southern Georgia and Southern
okay.
Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Kroger's big and they have the ability to deploy a large amount of capital into such a project. So I think, yeah, CFCs are going to solve for you're not going to have a lot of smaller guys necessarily, do CFCs unless they have access to that kind of capital where they can do that.
Would it make sense for independents, not wholesalers, to get into the CFC business? I'm just trying to think philosophically.
Could.
Or would it make more sense for them to help their retailers with MFCs that can be more closer to the ground, closer to the customer?
Well, I mean, I think that the CFC model, and Kroger has done their analysis, and they believe in the CFC model. They're the only retailer in the U.S. So far to believe in that model. It places a really big burden. I'll get back to the question about the wholesalers, but a CFC places a very high burden on the productivity of delivery from it, right? So, you have this, high asset cost, efficiently picked order that comes out. To make the math of the model work, you've got to deliver, very efficiently from there. You've got to get, a high number of deliveries per hour so that the delivery cost on that is low. Like, you can't take on a delivery cost that, might be $10 or $15 per order, because that will just consume any economics that are left in that. So, a wholesaler could do that, but they'll be faced with the same economics out of it. Now, a wholesaler could, if they could get the right network of retailers to work with, you could have a CFC, spit out, trailer loads, 53-foot trailer loads of orders, where those are shuttled, down into a market for a retailer, and then those are dispersed, for the retailer. There's lead time on those, right? I mean, you'd have to have at least a 24-hour lead time on those.
So there's CFC.
Micro fulfillment center, if you're an independent or a mid-sized retailer being serviced by a wholesaler, the micro fulfillment center is already right down there in market.
Right.
So they're a little bit more efficient at serving those customers. So, a wholesaler certainly could participate in that. They could, if they were really aggressive, and they had the capital availability, they could develop their own network of micro fulfillment centers that they could put down in these local markets, and either house them directly, or either use them to serve directly specific retail customers, like one MFC for one retail customer, or maybe you do one MFC and it serves a couple of retailers.
Yeah, because the thing, what I didn't realize, at least about Kroger, the Kroger Ocado iteration of the CFCs that are starting now, is that they're designed not to serve stores, but just they're direct to consumer.
Yep.
So if I ordered from a Kroger, if I ordered for pickup, for a click and collect from a Kroger store, that CFC at this point, now they said they can change it, is not serving that. They're only serving in terms of direct delivery to me, as I get it. So that means they've got to, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong,
Yep.
They've got to have a fair amount of density. But even 100 miles, it's a long distance. I mean, you're not getting 1 hour delivery that way.
No.
Depending on where you are. And plus, I don't think of, say, Southern Alabama, in the case of the Florida CFC, as being particularly dense in terms of population, and
right.
to be able to support what this enormous, it's a big facility. It's an enormous bet.
Yeah, again, they've done the math, so they know what they're doing, but it seems it would be pretty tough to get the requisite amount of density out of a facility in as sparsely populated an area as the northern part of Florida, right? So you think, there's a van load of orders come out of the CFC, and I don't know if that's 20 orders, 24 orders, 30 orders, how many orders fit on one of those vans? But if that van gets filled, it's going to take off and go. I guess on average it would be 50 miles if it serves 100 miles, right? I mean, for argument's sake. It drives 50 miles, which is probably the better part of an hour, to get to the first delivery. Then you have to hope your logistics will lay this out, but then you have to have relatively good density of drops once you get there, and then you got to drive back.
Right.
So you've got 2 hours of a driver's shift time spent driving to and from their route, right? So now you've got, call it 6 hours of a driver's shift time to deliver 20, 24 orders. I mean, maybe, the magic number in e-commerce is 4 deliveries per hour. So if you can get 4 deliveries per hour out of it, the economics could work.
Yeah, but when you think about it, if I'm living in, I'm trying to do my Florida geography really quickly in my head.
Right. You're not going to get 2 hour delivery.
I'm living in Panama Beach.
Yeah.
I place an online order with Kroger. Well, what if I'm the only person up there who's made that order and I want a delivery? I want to get it.
Yeah.
Even if I want to get it tomorrow, if I'm the only one who's there's going to be a period of time. There's going to be a lot of trucks who are going to be
There's an investment period of low density for sure in these. I mean, that's a great question, Kevin. I mean, yeah, if you're the only one up there, then what? So Kroger will make the order available. They'll gauge how much demand there is up there and what kind of density can be created. And then if it's not great, what a lot of retailers do, not to say Kroger will do this, but then you start what we would call in the old days, even at Amazon, would call it demand shaping, where you would close off slots on certain days and times and then move all of your demand into fewer slots for a geography. So, you might come on and want your order tomorrow morning, but you might see, I don't have anything available till Thursday morning. So I'm going to pick a Thursday morning slot.
And as a customer, I'm thinking it's because you're so busy, but it's in fact because you only want to make the run once.
Right, exactly. You're trying to get better economics out of it.
Now, okay, so let's, for the sake of argument then, so Kroger, let's say Kroger's doing that. We're talking Panama City, but they're competing with, let's say, a Walmart which has decided to get into the MFC business, right? I don't know where Albertsons has stores, but let's assume they've got some stores in Alabama, Northern Florida,
Sure.
somewhere. They're in the MFC business. And then there's Amazon, which is also while it's in the CFC business, moving. Well, that's the next question. But let's say Amazon, but certainly Amazon's got the logistics down to figure out. I could order a book, or I could order, a pad from Amazon and want it tomorrow, and they're going to get it to me one way or the other.
Right.
So it seems to me that they're at least for a period of time, and it's that investment period you're talking about, where they are at least at a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, customers want their chosen product source, aka retailer, to be responsive to their needs.
Right.
And if the customer has a same day need or a next day need, MFCs are certainly going to solve that. CFCs ultimately can, but with cost and challenge to get there. Yeah, I mean, it's all about having that inventory close to the customer. And if your inventory is held further away from the customer, it just puts more burden on your logistics to get it to the customer, consistently and quickly.
I hadn't thought about this. I mean, one of the points and I think I had it the story where I reported on the Kroger Ocado press conference last week. I mean, the Ocado guy said, "Oh, listen, we're in the MFC business." I think he said in the UK, as well as being in the CFC business, and CFCs are a lot more profitable.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows where he's talking about it?
Well, that could also have to do with geography, right?
Right. I mean, London's pretty dense.
Right. It's also, and it's not that big.
Right. Exactly.
So
But they've still struggled with profitability from the CFCs. I mean, they're profitable now, but they've had to do a lot of work on their logistics infrastructure to get it to profitability.
So Amazon, if you look at Amazon's model, and obviously Amazon's model is different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
In part because it's just starting from a different place. It was building this from the ground up as opposed to imposing it on an existing system. And the point you've always made is it's a lot harder to impose this kind of
stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. In the case of Amazon, is it fair to say they've always been operating what we think of as CFCs, although with less of a technological, I mean, and then are they moving now by opening these, as they're moving into a brick and mortar phase, clearly, are they going to get more in the MFC business?
Well, so, Amazon, back when they started, built pretty large, I mean, originally it was out of Jeff's garage. So I guess that was the first warehouse, but, ultimately, they started building these larger facilities that were situated throughout the country so that you could get products parcel delivered to you within 2 days.
Right.
And because they were endeavoring to be the everything store, they had lots of categories represented. These were big facilities with lots of different SKUs in them. So effectively they were a CFC, but like you said, with very little automation. For them, the secret sauce was how they store products in the warehouse to generate pick density. So to enable a picker going through the store with the route that they're through the warehouse to route their, it would route the picker's path so that they're picking products often, so they get a high pick rate and a low cost per pick. And then it goes to some automation to get it sorted into boxes and all that. As Amazon gets bigger, they endeavor to put more inventory close to customers based on the demand and velocity of that inventory. Right. And so, I mean, Amazon has hundreds of facilities in the US now, millions and millions of square feet probably not 100 million yet, but millions and millions of square feet. And so as you talk about these faster moving categories like grocery and CPG, that product, because it moves so quickly, is going to be down close to customers. So whether it's an Amazon Fresh facility, whether it's a forward deploy node, where they're picking and packing a variety of products from, or whether it's a new brick and mortar store, that they have micro fulfillment within that they're servicing, they're going to keep pushing that product out to where it makes the most sense to service the customer. And then if there's attributes of the product like temperature and quality checks and those kinds of things, they build that capability around it as well. So, I think Amazon is in the, probably Genesis was in the CFC business, but their philosophy is much more MFC. Is probably their I would say their philosophy a little bit more so. But that really just depends on the attributes of the product. If it's a slow moving product, it'll be sitting up in a node in a bigger building, further back upstream in the supply chain.
So I talk to retailers all the time who are saying, I mean, and it might be 10 stores, 20 stores, 30 stores, 40 stores, who at the moment are sort of saying to themselves, okay, do I need to be investing in a micro fulfillment center? And they're calculating the numbers, trying to figure that out. I sort of find it interesting that they're making the leap from in-store pick
Right.
to fulfillment centers without stopping to like invest in a dark store. It would seem to me that would be the next step.
Right. The general rules of thumb out there, based on kind of an average sized grocery order and the different environments that you pick them from, right? In a traditional kind of store-based picking environment, you're probably talking about, where you can pick maybe 60 line items per hour, and it takes you, 45 minutes to process an order. You're probably talking about $15 of cost, of labor cost to get that order picked. Go all the way out to CFC, MFC, you're at about like between $3 and $4 per order, doing, massive number of line items per order, very little human intervention. So that's, you're talking about like 20, 25% of less, the cost is 75% less cost than it is to store pick. Dark store falls kind of in the middle, right? A well-run dark store, you'll be maybe, $6, $7, $8 per order for picking. So there's a lot to be said for dark stores. If
because a dark store is sort of an MFC without the technology, right?
It's an MFC. Basically it's in market. It's a dark store. It's many retailers that could have formerly been an operating store of their own, and they turn off the lights and they reconfigure the inventory to make it more efficient to pick. And that becomes more productive. Others will take, some of this freeing up retail space, because there is some freeing up retail, store space, and reconfigure it into dark stores, even if it's not your own. If you're a grocer, it could be a, whatever other kind of retailer. So, there's a lot to be said for the dark store step. You do get a lot of benefit from that. But micro fulfillment, as far as a variable cost per order, is a lot less.
It seems to me that the less than a dark store.
It's a lot less cost per order than a dark store, but you're spending, a few $1 million to put it up.
Right. Because that's the thing, it seems to me that, especially as I listen to Kroger and as I listen to you, it seems to me that for the vast majority of retailers, and I'm not including Kroger in that group, right? Because Kroger is Kroger. It makes more, that the priority ought to be, first of all, as being as close to the customer and the store experience as possible. And at least in the beginning, spend as little money as possible because you want to test it out.
R&D, absolutely.
Right. And so you could throw in you could find a dark store, and a dark store doesn't have to actually be technically a dark store. It could just be an empty warehouse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Just got to be close by.
Somewhere in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so, so the opportunity, so the key ought to be figuring out the model first, maybe with a dark store, and then investing in the MFC, gradually.
That was always a big philosophy of ours at Amazon. Manually work on the model with as little automation, as little automation as possible, because it's just easier to test and iterate, and experiment. And then as you start honing in on the value proposition around the operation, then look to see what you can automate for consistency and efficiency.
Right. And I would think a good company that's sort of doing MFC technology and infrastructure would help retailers. Would help retailers do that, because they understand that if they can make the dark store model work, the shift into being an MFC, can be sort of organic,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, that simply, yeah, because because I do think sometimes there's a tendency to go after the bright shiny object, right? And oh, we should do an MFC, and you haven't,
Everybody else is doing it.
right, because everybody else is doing it, but you haven't proven the case yet for
Yeah.
um with other
Yeah.
options.
I mean, the math is compelling. It is a very low variable cost. But you're talking about a difference of, call it, $3 to $4 per order. There are other things you can be working on if you
Right.
have a dark store. Things like trying to get a higher order size, right? Getting the right product mix, the right margin, the right delivery or pickup density, right? There's a bunch of other things you can work on as far as the efficiency and the economics of the model that you don't necessarily have to jump right to micro fulfillment.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of these things going up. It's going to be really interesting to see how the model.
It's
And
gonna be
listen,
fun.
at the end of the day, I mean, Kroger seems to be making, Kroger went right to Vegas. It didn't stop it.
Big bet.
It didn't stop at Mohegan Sun. It went right to Vegas. And it went to the big tables.
Go big or go home, baby.
Anyway, well, thank you for enlightening me on this. I've been sort of struggling with trying to figure out how to approach this stuff.
Everybody is.
All right. Well, listen, that's it. That's it for this edition of the Innovation Conversation. Tom, thanks as always. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Kevin. Sounds great.
See you, everybody.
Bye.